We are speaking about gender-based violence in South Africa, not just today, but also historically. We are joined by a panel of different people from different groups in society who also have a part in gender-based violence today. Just to let you know, with COVID regulations, we have sanitizer, we have our masks, and we also are 1.5 meters from one another, so we have kept to all the rules. We'd like to welcome our guests, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Charlie Naidoo. So I wear various hats, but today I think I'm mostly going to be wearing the hat of SAWLA. It's an organization that I represent. SAWLA is a South African Women Lawyers Association. One of the key motives or intentions of SAWLA is to make sure we preserve and protect the rights of women. SAWLA, we have a national branch as well as the provincial branches in each province. I'm the chairperson of SAWLA in the Free State. And we've had lots of different projects. During COVID, when it was, I think, lockdown 5, we made masks and we distributed masks throughout South Africa. We went into prisons, especially for female prisoners. We distribute shoes for children, and basically wherever there is a need. We also do pro bono work. So for example, if a woman is in an abusive relationship and she wants to get out, so we sometimes do divorce for free as well. So it's quite a broad field, and we cover the whole of South Africa, hopefully. It's an organization not that well known. We're still trying to market ourselves more, so this is a good platform. But we are available, and for women all over South Africa. They just need to maybe go onto our website and then have a research and then contact us through that way.
Hi everyone, I'm Lemohang, Sekeleoane. I'm a lecturer at Motheo College. I'm lecturing painting and entrepreneurship and business management, and I'm an artist, a practicing artist residing here in Bloemfontein. And what the contribution of art is in a way of bringing awareness of the abuse of women and children. And there's a way that we can pass a message through art to the society. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, and also from the spiritual point of view.
Hi, I'm Harpe, Roux. I'm a pastor in the Dutch Reformed Church and also MD of NGO Towers of Hope. And we work from the old inner city church here in Bloemfontein, the old two-tower church with a long historical tradition, connection with the museum and the Women's Memorial. So we work with vulnerable people in wherever or whomever crosses our path. Whether it's men, whether it's older people, whether it's youngsters, but then especially ladies. One thing I had to learn, me and my staff, the last couple of years, we can't fix things, but it's much more a ministry of presence, of being with people, validate people, listening to their stories, and if there's an opportunity to motivate and encourage so that situations can be changed, we do that. But I had to unlearn some of the stuff. That as a pale male, you can have a solution for every crisis, but sometimes it's just being with people, and especially then in terms of today's topic, gender-based violence, the terrible things, young ladies trying to make a living on the street, what they go through, and I'll share something about that in our conversation.
I'm Dané Swanepoel. I'm a researcher here at the War Museum in Bloemfontein, and at the museum, we actually look after the memory of more than 35,000 black, white women and children, their legacy, who died in the concentration camps. But the concentration camps was just one part of it. So I just want to tell you quickly a bit about the women's experiences before they got to the concentration camps and then when they got there. And to show you that gender-based violence is something that they were struggled with during the time of the South African War, which is 121 years past, And we still struggle with it today, and I think it's important for us to know that we must then address it, because we are struggling with something for more than 100 years. And I think we must really do something about it and learn from the past and try not to repeat the mistakes that has been made. So I take you back to almost 121 years ago when the war broke out. So the war broke out on the 11th of October 1899. And in the beginning, there was fights between the Boers and the British. And the women and children were left on the farms. They had to tend the farms while the men were away. It wasn't just the Boers women and children, it was also the Agterryers women and children. Now, Agterryer was the black or coloured attendant to the Boer who went with the Boer to fight in the war. So their families were left on the farm. And they were also then, of course, very vulnerable on the farm. And in 1900, the scorched earth policy was declared. Now, this was declared by Lord Roberts to try and keep the Boers from blowing up the railway station. So they thought, let's kind of hit them where it hurts, so it'll be their farms. So in a radius of about 300 meters of where a railway was destroyed, the farms in that area would be burned down. Now, the problem came with, now you've burned down this farmhouse, but you have women and children now desolate. So what do? So the concentration camp system was started. Unfortunately, this system was not well thought through. It was not very well run, especially by the military, and it created a humanitarian disaster in the end. Just to give you an idea what a woman would have experienced when she went through the scorched earth action, which was later intensified by Lord Kitchener. So it wasn't just about farms that was in the proximity of a destroyed railway, it was any farm you got to. So they would, we were only there for a few minutes, but we can do damage in a short time. So this is a British soldier explaining. I put the butt of my rifle through a large looking glass, which is a mirror, over the mantelpiece and put my foot through a sideboard with glass doors. One of the others smashed up a piano and an organ. The women didn't scream. I thought they would go for us, but it was an awful sight. I should not have thought that I could have done such a thing, but when you get in with the regular soldiers and you have a good gallop, we get a bit excited and don't care what comes next. So this is the explanation of a soldier of how he wouldn't do it normally, but because of the setting in which he is, which is power over these women, all of a sudden it becomes okay and it becomes enjoyable. Because he said, we've got a good gallop and we're in it. But for the women, it wasn't the same. And they experienced these scorched earth tactics as very harassful. So they harassed the women, the way they spoke to the women, the way they would treat the women was very, in a sense of power over these women. And the Boer women, if you look culturally, they would probably not have taken very lightly to this because they were not used to being treated in that way. And then there were also women who, after the war or during the war, started saying that they were raped or they were assaulted by some of the British soldiers. And there was then a Havenga Report created by Havenga. So he took women's testimonies, so their own words, and he just compiled it because they realized that it was getting more and more. And I'm just going to read you a bit about that. So this is a testimony by Johanna Haldenays. My 10-year-old daughter, Talita Lewis, and I were alone at the farm on 22 January 1902. When Remington's patrol arrived, 2 British soldiers seized me and dragged me to a room, while a 3rd soldier ripped off Lita's clothes. When she was naked, he sexually assaulted her. I could not bear to see what they were doing to my young child. The 2 soldiers who were holding me then kicked and beat me. I ended up lying on the floor. The soldiers who had abused Talita pushed her away and grabbed me. He raped me in that room in front of my daughter, and the 2 other soldiers stood watching us through the windows. And that's just one of the many accounts that you get from these women. And I think the thing that actually shocked me is that while I read this, it's something I could have read in the newspaper today. So we haven't changed anything in these 121 years past. So the women during this war also experienced gender-based violence because they were women, and sexual abuse was used against them as a form of power. So for us at the museum, gender-based violence is very important because the women that we represent went through it, but the women of our society today is also still going through it. So Charlie, can you maybe give us an idea of how your organization tries to help women today deal with things like this? Because even in this time, for example, you would never have said that you were raped. They didn't even use the word rape. They would just say, they hurt me. And also, they wouldn't say, because if they said, then they would have been a scarlet woman, they wouldn't have been really up for marriage. So, and I think today there's still a stigma about rape and the woman not having really a place to come forward. So how do you guys help with that?
Okay, thanks, Dané. It's actually very shocking to see that what happened, historically is actually still happening now. And I think one of the issues is why, definitely we've come a long way in South Africa, in the world, with different organizations. There is a plethora of legislation that protects women's rights. But, to go to the root cause of why is it still continuing. So I just want to go through maybe like firstly a definition of what is gender-based violence, and just read the CEDAW. Now CEDAW is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women. It's an international organization, so and it's good that we're actually moving onto an international plane as well. And CEDAW defines discrimination against women as any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex, which has the effect or purpose of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by women, irrespective of their marital status, on the basis of equality of men and women, of human rights and fundamental freedoms in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field. So you see that the definition of discrimination against women is very broad. It basically covers everything. And I think when you look at society today, you're moving from cultural discriminations. I mean, most of the time the way a boy child is brought up as compared to a girl child, there's discrimination. There's discrimination in the political field, in the workplace. There's still, the majority of men actually being in senior CEO positions as opposed to women. So to address that, and there's lots of legislation, as I said initially, that compels government, especially, to make sure that this whole thing about Section 9 of the Constitution, equality, that women experience the same rights as men. But unfortunately, I think the problem is in the implementation of those rights. And I think that is where SAWLA comes in, to say, okay, we have all these rights. Women are aware. Now, the challenge is that women in, for example, rural villages are not so aware of their rights. And sometimes for us, like in SAWLA and legal people, it's like breathing to know what your rights. And the weird and the odd thing is that even lawyers and even, advocates are exposed to this. And as you said, when you spoke of the rape of, the daughter and the mother, it was more a power thing. It wasn't about anything else. It was more a power thing. And unfortunately, I think the testosterone levels are very high, and it's more a power thing, because you can get gender-based violence in a marital relationship. A married woman can be raped as well, and it's more a power thing. So SAWLA is trying to address those things, and as you said also rightfully, is that women are so afraid to actually come to the fore because of the stigma attached. When you are raped and when your dirty laundry is exposed in a court of law, you as a woman feel more that you become the victim of this entire rape. not just because the fact that you were raped, but because society, places a stigma. I mean, if a woman wore a short dress or something, society will look more to blame a woman who was raped than actually attribute blame to a man. So those are the issues that we need to undo sort of in society, and I think culturally, patriarchal upbringing as well is another issue. I mean, right from the time a little boy, I know it's in the black culture, I know it's in the Indian culture. In the Indian culture, you'll get a male that would actually inherit, just like in the black culture. He must inherit the majority of the assets and so forth. So those kind of things places a stigma on a woman. I'm a lesser being, I'm inferior, and that is why most of the time when she's abused in a relationship, she feels, but this is supposed to be, this is how it is, because of the inferiority complex that she was brought up with. So there's lots of various issues surrounding gender-based violence, and sometimes you get a woman that's in an abusive relationship for years, and her children are brought up, and they know that every time dad has alcohol, for example, it's going to be a night of abuse. And that woman might stay with this person for 10 years, and you ask yourself why. One of the major reasons, for example, in our dealing with women is financial. The woman is not financially free, so she cannot actually leave her husband and move with 5 kids or 3 kids to support. So she stays in that abusive relationship, and it's so it's such a psychological thing that she forgives him. So on the weekend he will abuse her terribly, she'll land in hospital. She might even call the police on him. Then she would withdraw the charges, and she would go back to him on a Monday when he comes pleading that he's sorry for what he did. And he could be genuinely sorry, but the abuse and the psychological and the trauma that he's put the entire family on is still there. It doesn't go away. The fact that he said sorry doesn't eliminate the damage that was done. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes this damage is done over years, to a point where a woman doesn't feel any worth. So she's psychologically abused, financially, and society also shuns her. So this whole reinforcement of how a woman should be, it's historical, as you say. So SAWLA is in the process of actually trying to assist women. So we are there. We've distributed masks. As I said, we went to the domestic violence court, and we speak to women. We try and empower women to know their rights, to know exactly if you are abused or in an abusive relationship, what do you do? How do you apply for a protection order? If the husband doesn't comply with the protection order, what do you do? That if a policeman doesn't assist you, what do you do? So we try and empower women to say, these are your rights and these are the avenues that you can, that's available to you in the event you are abused. So we have, as I say, organizations like SAWLA that women can come to, and I don't have all the details right now, but if you go onto Google and you Google SAWLA, you'll see that we've got, as I said, various branches. Each province has a provincial branch, and you've got the national SAWLA as well. And you will get the contact details. You can contact us, if you need advice, because sometimes all a woman needs is advice, to say there is a way out of this. So as I said previously, financial constraints is one of the biggest things why a woman will not get out. And one of the sayings that I like sharing is, he who controls the purse controls the person. And unfortunately, if you're in a marital relationship, in an abusive relationship, and you're not financially free, it's very hard to get out. No parent wants to take their child who's been in a marital relationship with the children, because most of the time the parents themselves, are poor. So, and I think for women out there who's actually in need, and I think the Reverend is also going to share, there are avenues out there. I think the first thing for a woman who's in an abusive relationship is not keep it a secret. And society will not blame you. There are organizations out there, there are churches out there, there's the police, And if the police is not assisting, you can go to the police commissioner to complain. So there's avenues, there's organizations like Power, people opposing women abuse. There's a lot of different organizations in the various provinces as well. You know, just do some research and get there. And a policeman also must help you if, for example, you've been raped. He will refer you to a clinic or someplace where you get tested and examined. Because the most important thing is, if you've been raped, to get to a police station as soon as possible, so that they can, do the medical examinations to prove maybe there is semen still available and so forth, so that they can gather evidence, whatever the evidence is, to build up your case against the perpetrator. The police will also refer you to a consultation, like a social worker or someone to help you with the psychological trauma. So there is, avenues out there for women who are in gender-based violence. They just need to access it. Yeah, so that in the long and the short, I don't want to go through my entire thing here because it will take quite a while with all the statistics and stuff. But yeah, that's the long and the short of what SAWLA is about.
We'll also put SAWLA's information at the end of the video.
Yes.
So if there's anybody who wants to contact you, who feel that they need help, then they were able to contact you. And you said you were doing art. When it comes to gender-based violence, does explaining it in art, how does that help maybe the victims of gender-based violence to deal with what happened to them and maybe to educate other people about what these women went through?
Art works almost as a messenger, a message like to communicate. It is something that you can communicate, like you can portray an image of a raped child, of a raped woman, or somebody that went through abuse, and how you can say in your own opinion, and people can also, when they look at the artwork, then they have their own interpretation. And so if we come together as society, pray about it, I as an artist or with other artists, we can create artworks to bring about communication about the spiritual awareness and how it affects our life, our daily lives. The outcome is spectacular. I love praying. I do get people that come to me, like I'm a lecturer, so I deal with a lot of students. The students that actually had been raped, the students that are having men having power over the family and causing havoc.
So you've had some first-hand experiences with your students?
With my students,
Yeah.
I deal with that almost on a regular basis. I deal with that on a regular basis. I'm a lecturer, but I'm supposed to be a lecturer, but then I also work as a psychologist.
So many things that are reflecting on what you say and want to engage with you on that. But as I was listening to what you were saying in terms of, I love the Charlie, the thing that women must know their rights, and unfortunately, it's a situation that not only in the rural areas but even in the city, many women don't know their rights. And gender-based violence, definitely the worst manifestation is sexual assault and rape and all that. But it's much more than that. It's like you were mentioning, how women are controlled because they don't have any other financial means and they have to stay in abusive relationships. So even in the workplace, women have to stick it out because they need the job, they need the income. But as I was listening to what you were saying, both of you and my brother, the artist, oh man, I love what you said, is that, to reflect and to talk about gender-based violence and how to address it. There are many different ways you have to work at the problem. The one, definitely the rights, and, train or expose the issue, and women can know they can stand up, and the laws are there to protect them. And I think that's where what I heard that you guys are doing a wonderful work, and I would love to promote you also. On the other hand, gender-based violence means there's another gender, and it's other forums which I'm part of. Much of the discussion is also about men. How do we? And you spoke about spirituality. I don't want to go to demons and angels. Let's just bypass that for a moment, eh? But spirituality in terms of what what's happening inside a man that, or not, that he acts like that. Whether it's the worst sexual assault, rape, or just not thinking he can lord it over any woman, no matter his daughters or no matter his wife, but his parents, his elderly mother. And I can tell you many terrible stories of what we've experienced. And gender-based violence, interesting, I was thinking of a situation quite a while ago we dealt with at the House of Hope, is where an old elderly lady suffered gender-based violence, but not from males, but from other females. So she was, in a sense, trapped in a situation that it wasn't the grandchild, it was a grandchild that sort of forced the mom or a grandmother to take care of the great-grandchild. And then to tell you, I've been involved as this lady for a while, it's sickening. Oh, this old lady has got nothing. And she has to do what her granddaughter wants her to do, being used as the servant, just to have a place to stay. And then at the stage, it's a long story, but many things happened. And then when we intervened from the House of Hope, she was stuck in a situation in the township where she ended up in an outside room with a leaking roof and the wind coming through the walls. And there was also a lady, no family, but a lady staying in the house. And this poor elderly lady had to pay rent for that, but she hasn't got any money. And now you see how it went further. Now she went to loan sharks, a little bit of sassa money gone. The loan shark just grabbed it. So we tried to get the loan shark to trap him, but he smelled the rat. So she lost that money. So eventually we intervention, and got her into an old age home. And again, now she's in the old age home, but then the granddaughter still comes and has this good job, but can't work with money. So a little bit money her grandmother gets. She sort of tried to get that. So the gender-based violence thing, if you start thinking about that, and especially for us as males, we have to engage with this.
Yeah.
Not only, and again, not to patronize ladies, to say you must do this and that, and that's why I think the organization must be run by women, not men. But also to say the whole time, ladies of South Africa, we as men, we are so sorry for what you have been suffering. Whether it's in the 100 years ago, the Anglo-Boer War, whether in my own eyes I'm not any perpetrator, but I'm a male. If I think of the ladies on the other hand, we work on the street with. Now, we had just before we started the discussion, we speak about in Towers of Hope as ladies trapped in prostitution. I know there's some other organizations that say, no, you mustn't say prostitution, you must say sex work. But I mean, all of us, your sexuality is something so precious. Now to expose that, to sell that, to make money to live, that can't be work. So we have made a definite choice to speak about ladies, we honor them. And some of them I've known for more than 10 years as we do outreaches on the street here in Bloemfontein. But we also say they are not defined by how they try to make a living. Because in a sense being forced to sell their own bodies in the most terrible way, and let me put it bluntly out there, the men that pick them up, they don't give them, trying to say it as best as possible, nice sex. We've had horror stories, how they were handled, how they were killed by these men. And they come back again and again, because they also want to have a cell phone, want to take care of their child in the township. And many of them would ask us, please don't tell my family, because Bloemfontein is small. You'll be surprised when I meet some of the ladies there. Oh, I know actually your grandmother, or I know your father, or your uncle. And the children mustn't know. So the violence, they are forced is a strange word, but because of circumstances, they just want to survive, but also, they also want to have nice things. So they don't willingly, while the ladies we work with, I don't know about other sectors of sex work or prostitution, but the ladies we work with, they don't willingly do that, they do that to survive. And what happens there, part of the entrapment also happens in the abuse, is because they are sucked in. You know, what happens, and I'm just a pastor, I'm not a sexuologist, You know, but if I read the Bible also, when there's sexuality involved, it's not just your body, it's your spirit. You talk about spirituality. So sometimes when I pray for these ladies on the street, and I'm like a father figure, for God's grace, what a privilege. They're my second tier of daughters. I've got my own 20-something daughters. That to pray, Lord, protect their spirit. Because the men that picked them up abused them in the most terrible way. They killed them. We've got in our church, we call it a cross of remembrance. And most of the 90% of the names of the are vulnerable people that passed away, whether because of a drug overdose or whether they died in the cold of winter or whatever stuff. But there are a couple of them, ladies that died on the street, whether through illnesses or whether some were killed by these so-called clients. It wasn't a nice conversation. I would have used stronger words. And I'm not known as a pastor. I would have said much stronger words than clients. Vrachtig. They're not clients. They are more than bullies. So coming back to your spiritual, what you talk about spirituality. So we have got a need on the one hand to journey with ladies, teach them about their rights. Some of them are so damaged. Sometimes you just have to cry with them. Thursday night when we went out on the street again, at one place we had a conversation, we take out sandwiches and coffee and whatever. I mean, the pastor hands out condoms, can you imagine? Because we want them to be safe. So at the one place, we could not make a good conversation. They were not even making small talk with us. There was a spirituality, a deadness. And some of those ladies there have known quite a couple of years already. And it breaks one's heart. So some of them you just have to journey with. Some you teach their rights. But definitely, in terms of not only pastors, but society, not only the Christian faith, but other faiths. So help men to say, hey man, what leads a man to become such a perpetrator? Not only of sexuality, but also with the whole oppressing women in whatever way. Lastly, God has given me 2 wonderful 20-something daughters. And just when I think I made it, they remind me of my blind spots. So I've got still a way to go. So sometimes I say tongue in the cheek, but I mean it. I am a recovering chauvinist. And chauvinism is the beginning of gender-based violence.
I think, Dané, based on what Reverend is saying, it just reminds me, we had a Women Know Your Rights. You remember that, you were part of it as well. And what was very interesting is we had a whole lot of youth then. And, my generation, we're not very familiar with these sugar daddies and all those kind of people. But what was exposed in that discussion is two things that really blew my mind was how many of our young, youth that's in varsity is actually exposed to this.
Exactly.
And what you said is they like nice things.
For sure.
They like cell phones and nice clothes.
And we like nice things also.
Yes.
So we can't blame them.
So one of the youth actually said, but what's wrong in that? Because, and unfortunately, some of these men that exploit these younger women, actually kids to me, they're my children's age, they say, but we come from our villages, a lot of them, and we just have an education, money to pay the money for the education. We don't have place to stay. We don't have food. We don't have anything. And these people, so for exchange of sex, we actually get a flat. We get cars. We get clothes. We get So what's wrong in that?
Sure.
And for me, it was very hard because it was a short session. They didn't want to go actually. To actually, explain to them, but it's more than just physical, material things. It's your soul, your spirit, that's being affected. And when you tarnish that, it's a lifelong thing, And I like what Andries said about, your spirituality, because, the Bible says you wrestle not against flesh and blood,
Amen.
but against principalities.
Preach it, sister.
So that whole, and it said that when you have sex with a person, it's a covenant relationship.
Yes.
And so if you have sex with 10 people, those 10 people had sex with other people, and it's unbelievable the curse that comes through. So it's hard to explain, but what I'm saying is society, we bred this generation of youngsters who do not, and it's our fault. For me, I also take the blame that I've not educated them enough. And so we've had many other sessions, workshops, to try and get the mindset of the youngsters changed to say it's not just about money and sex and it's an easy thing. You might think it's an easy thing just to give someone sex in exchange for a flat. I mean, an entire apartment. I mean, or a car. But in the long run, you're actually selling your soul.
Yes, you're
and
selling your soul.
You're destroying it, and it's going to take a lot of spiritual warfare, if I can put it, to actually get back and to become whole. And I think that's where pastors' organization comes in. And another thing that you mentioned is, you see, when we have all our, that's why I like we 2 females, 2 males here, and it's a good thing, because usually when SAWLA has their workshops or whatever, we invite only females. And the last time we had a psychologist there, female psychologist, and she said, but why are you preaching to the converted?
Amen.
Invite the men,
Yes.
from
Yes.
government, from people in power, and invite them so that they can understand your plight, they can feel your pain, and they can know what you go through. So don't make it a women talk show.
Yeah.
And I think this is very important, that
Yeah.
we've come from all different walks,
Yes.
different race groups, and unfortunately, gender-based violence affects everyone.
Yeah.
Race, color, financial, it doesn't matter. It just affects everyone.
Yes. On that note, as you were saying about the spirituality, with all the solutions we can come up with, we all playing our part in the physical. In the, Psalms 127 says, if the Lord does not build the house, the work of the builders is useless. If the Lord does not protect the city, it is useless for the sentries to stand guard. It is useless to work so hard for a living, getting up early and going to bed late. For the Lord provides for those he loves while they are asleep. So if the Lord does not build the house, like the house would be any of the efforts we're trying to build right now to make a difference into the society and the people that are suffering the abuse out there. So if the efforts we are making here, any efforts, if the Lord is not part of that, it is pointless. Any type of security we are trying, we can raise all the money. Like right now, you see there's people like celebrities raising all the money, trying to go out there and feed the poor, but then it just keeps getting worse. Why is that? Why is there more solution? The more solution there is, the more problems get worse. Why? Why is that? Because if we are making any efforts without involving the Lord, and the Lord is not part of the solution, then all the efforts, it's really pointless. So like Charlie said, we are not fighting against the flesh and blood. We are not fighting against the human beings, but we are fighting against the spiritual forces in heavenly realms. We are fighting against the rulers, authorities in heavenly realms. So whatever war that we are trying to get involved in right now, we have to stand first and go and get involved with our Father. We have to involve God in any solution we are trying to come up with here.
There's a Latin saying, I've come to know from what church tradition it comes from. It said, ora et labora, prayer and word. So sometimes being privileged, what a privilege I have to work where I work, we do the labora. So sometimes I get frustrated for all the talk shops. But the talk shops and the making awareness of people, and whether it's about for men or for ladies or for whomever, that's very important. So you can't have one without the other.
Yes.
Sometimes, for many things, as a practitioner out there on the street, I sometimes feel we prayer is good, but the balance must be there.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you. Thank you for emphasizing that.
Yes.
As a pastor, I say amen, brother. Keep on preaching.
I do. What I'm talking about is I do help physically. I do take out my salaries and like
fancy, but with the little that I get, before I give anyone, I do pray
Amen.
for that blessing.
Amen.
Then it brings change. It is not
Yes.
it is not the money that I give that gives the change, but then it is the prayer that go along
Yes.
with what I
Amen.
give.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you guys. This is really, really interesting, and I'm glad we could get all the different viewpoints from all the different groups. And we will be putting the information in the description of the video as well, so people want to maybe contact you. Maybe you've said something that's interested them. Maybe there's some artists who want to work with you. We'll give all your information there. And thank you once again for speaking to us, because we as the museum, we also care about our community. So we want to know what's going on and where we can help. So thank you very much. We appreciate your attendance.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank
invitation.
you for the invitation. Thanks a lot.